Back for another edition of In the Huddle, guys. Carl Dukes put them up along with Jason La Canfora, Brian Bladinger. The whole crew is here. We got a lot to discuss. And literally, as Jason and I signed off of the podcast earlier this week, literally like 10 minutes later, the Jets news happened. And so we have to start there and address this, guys. Baldy, obviously, we've talked a lot about the Jets in the offseason, whether this was going to work. I think Aaron even said, if I don't play well, somebody's going to get fired or we're all going to get fired.
Yeah.
Well, Robert Saleh is the first coach in the NFL this season to get let go. Week 5, a lot of people say the timing is curious. What's going on with the Jets right now?
Well, I mean, offensively, they're a mess. You could just start there. Defensively, they played very well. They had a great chance to win that game. Aaron's not playing well. They're the worst rushing football team in football right now. The owner says, we've got a very talented roster. We should be playing better. Okay. Well, he's not wrong, but I don't know. I honestly don't know how it all went down from the time they were on the plane in London, leaving, the conversations that were had on the plane, landing back in New Jersey, Florham Park, and that maybe, Jason, you fleshed it all out. I don't particularly care about those details. I know this. They're the last rush. Breece Hall is a good back. He's a very good back. He can't get out of the gate right now. I went back and he's run 65 times. I went back and watched every run yesterday. 31 of his 65 runs have gone for 2 yards or less. No offense coordinator is calling a run on 2nd and 13 in this league. Nobody. But at the same time, Aaron Rodgers has dropped back 108 times in the last 2 games, in games that were close. I mean, it was 17-0, but it became close last week. Nobody's dropping back 108 times and surviving, not 40-year-old quarterbacks for sure. So he's not going to make it through the season the way it's going. People think that the natural fall guy should have been Nathaniel Hackett, and they're not wrong. The offense stinks. So it should be much better. And there's a major disconnect. Even the last interception that Aaron threw to Michael Williams, he didn't know the ball was coming. Like the receivers somehow don't know that the ball's coming to them. Garrett Wilson's running the wrong route in the middle of the field against Denver the week before on the drive that's going down there to win the game. There is a major disconnect in this offense that you just don't see. You don't see it with Caleb Williams, with rookie quarterbacks. You don't see that. And so there's real problems there. And maybe Jeff Ulbrich can put the pads on and go out and get this stuff fixed up front, but this stuff shouldn't be happening right now.
Look, in 2023, the Jets were 2-3 after 5 games. They're 2-3 now.
Yep.
They averaged 18.6 per game. They're averaging 18.6 points per game. Yep. They had a 61% completion percentage. They have a 61% completion percentage. Yep. They averaged 6.1 yards per attempt last year through 5 games. This year, 6.0. They averaged 4.8 yards per play last year through 5 games. They're averaging 4.5. That's all gotten worse. The defense, Robert Saleh is part of the building, right? Because Lord knows Aaron Rodgers ain't letting him in quarterback meetings, and he ain't sitting there making the game plans. The defense is number 1 in yards per play allowed. The defense is number 9 against the run, number 1 against the pass, 8th on 3rd down, 6th in the red zone. They're allowing 17 points per game, but the quarterback can barely get to 18 with the offense. And Baldy, here's what I really don't get. It's not like they're making this change and bringing in an offensive mind from the outside. It's not like you had a great offensive coordinator who's being held back by a defense who wouldn't let him do what he wants to do, by a defensive-minded head coach, right? And now you flip the paradigm script. What you've actually done is taken the strength of your team, right? The D coordinator and the head coach in unison through the week and on Sundays, getting that side of the ball to play. You've now weakened that. You've taken one of those minds out of the building. And I don't think Robert Saleh is a great head coach. I'd have fired him last year after about 14 games. I'd have fired him in the offseason. But to fire him now and take a defense that's playing better than it has before, and now you've taken the primary defensive mind out of the mix because he's got to deal with the owner who's a handful. He's got to deal with the media. He's got to deal with all the players who are pissed off coming into his office. He's got to put out fires, taking time away from that defense. That's the only thing holding it together. And we've taken Robert Saleh, our other best defensive mind. He's gone now too. Tell me how this makes them better.
Well, you know, but the thing that also is going on defensively is look at Jamie and Sherwood step up. Like he's filling in for C.J. Mosley, who they pay a whole lot of money to.
Yeah.
He's played as well as any linebacker in football. Look at DJ Reed. I mean, he's as good a corner as there is in football right now. You're seeing players develop, you know. They lost Jermaine Johnson. Hassan Reddick, Denver showed up. They lost Bryce Huff, and they're still playing great. And so, you know, last year, it was a little bit later in the season, but, you know, Buffalo made that decision. We're going to fire our offense coordinator and elevate. So, you know, and here they are. And they got to the playoffs. It seemed like it was a pretty natural fix, except we all know it was going to upset one guy in the building if they did what looked like needed to be done.
Here's my deal on this, fellas. This just comes down to Jason's numbers there and the fact that the quarterback's just not playing well. When Rodgers got hurt last year, and this was the tale for me, and Nathaniel Hackett was running that offense, and yes, everybody wants to blame Garrett, right? Everybody wants to blame, you know, the quarterback. There was no progress. There was no schematical change to improve the offense last year. Right. And a lot of that had to do with Nathaniel Hackett relying on Aaron Rodgers to see what he sees on the field, call the audible, make the play, and he gets to sit with the headset on and not have to really do anything. Let's just be honest. He's sitting there and allowing Aaron to run the whole thing, and now Aaron is not playing well, and everybody wants to blame somebody else. It is a blank show right now. I do not know if they turn it around, but guys, let's transition into the reality, and that is if they win Monday night, they're sitting in first place. If they beat the Bills, which is the crazy part about this.
Well, whoever loses Monday night will be on a 3-game losing streak, okay? And so you're going to hear in Buffalo, because it showed up last week when they played Houston, like there is not a great passing game right now in Buffalo. The decision that Sean McDermott, I mean, we can get carried away at Buffalo. That decision at the 2-yard line with 32 seconds to go, it makes no sense at all.
Yeah.
None. First of all, every pass was from the end zone. Like any offensive penalty is a safety, and you're going to lose the game right there. And you've got James Cook, who's a hell of a back, or Josh Allen, either one of them, in any combination. You make Houston use their timeouts. I don't understand the reasoning behind that, but regardless, Monday night the Jets win. I mean, they'll get the bump that they hope they can get by elevating Jeff Ulbrich. And I like Jeff, but you know this guy is a very good defensive coordinator. I'll tell you a quick story. Last year they beat the Eagles, and they played without Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, or Michael Carter. They're top 3 corners, and I remember seeing them before the game, and I'm like, how are you gonna like I was just smiling at him, you know, like how are you gonna play this, Jeff? Like your 3 guys are out, you're elevating guys from the practice squad. I don't even know who their names are, and they beat the Eagles. Like, to your point, Jason, Jeff found a way without their best players to come up with a game plan, which is what coaching is all about.
Yeah.
To beat a really good Eagles team. We never saw that offensively, and we still don't see that offensively. In fact, I can't tell you after 5 games what their best run is. They don't know what their best run is. Like you should figure that out by now. Whether it's because the center can't move anybody off the ball, or the rookie right tackle is a little lost, or whatever it is. Like they should figure that stuff out by now.
Yeah, and you know, Jason, we talked about this earlier in the week. He's coming off of his worst game, right? 9 for 30.
Horrible.
30% completion percentage. I mean, it's 30 pass attempts, and it's the worst completion percentage since 1992. He's coming off of a terrible game. You have to believe he'll play a lot better going into this Jets game. But to Baldy's point, is coaching going to kill them? Because again, Sean McDermott, I blame him for what happened there in the end zone. That's not a Josh issue. But what do the Bills need to do against this defense that you just talked about? That's top 10 in a bunch of categories.
Well, I think they need to get back to running the football a little more. And I think the quarterback's got to get back to leading the charge, running the football a little bit more. And I don't know if that left hand is still an issue or what. Like, he's gone 4 straight games now without a rushing touchdown. And I don't think that is unrelated to their overall offensive woes. Like, he's got to finish drives in the red zone, I think, himself. And, when he's going airborne over the goal line, there's a lot of people like, oh, man, is that in our best interest? But, like, when he doesn't do that stuff and you don't have downfield receivers who can win, and then, one of them, Shakir, gets hurt, like, the tight ends haven't showed up the way I thought they would. And to Baldy's earlier point, they haven't put the ball in James Cook's hands enough the last 2 or 3 games. I mean, I think, you've got 3 running backs who all have a different role, and you've got a quarterback who can steamroll people. Like, I don't know that they're going to do a great job of moving the football against the Jets in the traditional offense. I think it's going to require them to get pretty creative about how they deploy the quarterback and how involved the quarterback is in their ability to run the football. Yeah, I don't see a whole lot of there right now with them offensively.
Let me ask you this before we move on, guys. It's In the Huddle. Subscribe, like us. It's In the Huddle Pod. You can watch us on YouTube. Follow Baldy. Baldy's breakdowns are great. Jason La Canfora. Follow him. Read him in the Washington Post, guys. Follow me and put him up. See Dukes and stay up on everything that's going on around the NFL. Here's what my question is before we move on. Is it possible that this offense doesn't get any better? Let's just say 3 weeks. That's a long time in the NFL, right? 3-4 weeks. Do they fire Hackett? Is it possible? Would they?
You think? I don't think Jeff Ulbrich is going to kowtow to anybody. Like, look, I don't know. I'm sure he's going to be a candidate down the road. Maybe. I mean, he's coached well. I think he's got. I gotta believe that he's going to do what's best for the team. And if Todd Downing is a better play caller, a better designer of offense, of game plans, then I believe he'll make that decision. Because here's the reason. Last year we saw a very good defense of the Jets for much of the season completely collapse. Because at some point, when you can't score points, like every defense collapses. It just does. And so Jeff knows that. He's coached in this league long enough and been a player in this league for good and bad teams long enough. So if he feels like Todd Downing's a better choice, like that's going to happen. And regardless of whose feelings get hurt right now.
In the meantime, bet the under here. The Jets at home the last 2 years are 7-4 to the under. Buffalo on the road since the start of 2023, 8-3 to the under. The last 10 times these teams have played, 8-2 to the under. Average total points 36.8. I don't see any reason to go against that right now. Jets games this year are averaging 35.6 points, and this thing is still over 40. I'm on the under.
Well, the last time they played at Jet Life Stadium 2 weeks ago, they didn't score a touchdown. Yeah. So they were held to 3 field goals. I mean, I don't know if it's going to change.
It's ugly.
I don't know.
It's ugly. No doubt. Jason, thank you for that because I was thinking the same thing. Hey, guys, let's talk about what's going to happen on this Thursday night football game. Mike McDonald came out and said, look, it's no secret. We got to run the ball more. They started 3-0. They've lost 2 in a row now. We're talking about Seattle. And the Thursday night matchup, San Francisco, Seattle. Okay, we know San Francisco's banged up. We know they don't have McCaffrey. But with all of that said, Baldy, I like the way Seattle's defense is playing. I like the way this team is kind of taking on the attitude of Mike McDaniel, but he's right about the offense, right?
Well, I mean, defensively, they were horrible last week. I mean, you put a rookie, Tyrone Tracy, out there, and he runs for 130 yards. The Giants' offensive line pushed them all over the place. They couldn't get to Daniel Jones last week. They played without Malik Neighbors. You wouldn't have known it. The Giants played their best football I've seen them play in years. But defensively, offensively, even the Giants were saying, Kenneth Walker gets 5 carries, 7 carries? Like, he's their best offense. He's literally, I mean, DK Metcalf is a great player, but he's literally their best player. He is a hard guy to tackle, but if you only give it to him a handful of times, he's never going to get going. And so the Giants, they were ecstatic that they dropped back to throw it because the offense line isn't very good, and maybe that's why they couldn't run it. But, they've got backups all over the place playing, and the Giants just destroyed Connor Williams and the right tackle by Brian Burns. But San Francisco looked like they didn't want to play last week. I mean, Kyler Murray goes for 50 on the second play of the game. And then the second half, I mean, they ran the ball right down the 49ers' throats. I haven't seen either safety for the 49ers make a play all year. Hufanga or Tig Brown, I haven't seen either one of them make a play. And they don't look like – I don't know what's missing. They look slow to me. They look really slow on offense. But defensively, they don't look like, outside of Fred Warner and maybe an occasional Nick Bosa play, maybe you got a bunch of stats to back it all up, Jason, but they don't look like an explosive team or a team that scares anybody defensively.
21st in yards allowed per play, 20th in rushing yards per play, 23rd in yards per pass attempt, 22nd on third down. Brock Purdy's the 13th ranked passer in the NFL. He's already thrown 4 picks. The sack rate, they're allowing, middle of the pack sack rate. So it's not like it's airtight or he doesn't have to worry about,
Jason,
pressure or blindside pressure.
But Jason, this is with Jordan Mason, the second leading rusher in the NFL. And you can talk about McCaffrey all you want. The kid is playing great football. The one constant they have in this offense has been Jordan Mason.
Yeah, it's going to be a weird game for me. Neither team's protecting the quarterback as well as they'd like. Neither team is winning up front defensively as much as they'd like. Shanahan has had their number recently. Obviously, Seattle's under new management now. I am a little bit intrigued, Baldy. We all saw what Mike McDonald did to Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy in San Francisco last year when people were coronating the 49ers. And that was an unmasking of Brock Purdy. Like, they basically hid behind an injury to get the kid off the field because it was getting embarrassing. Now, he doesn't have that same talent level with him to coach in this game, McDonald, but they are coming off a game against the Giants where they got manhandled. So, I'm very interested to see if this defense bows up a little bit and if some of the same principles that McDonald used against Shanahan and really that whole family tree last year. Because remember, he faced McVay, he faced Shanahan. He ran then he got Zach Taylor. Like, he ran a gamut then he got Bobby Slowick, right, in the first round of the playoffs. And he had the secret sauce against that family tree by and large. McVay and the Rams are the one team that got him a little bit. So that part of this matchup intrigues me. If you can get it at 3 somewhere and you shop around, I'd still probably lean 49ers here. But I don't think either of these teams are feeling great about themselves right now.
The loser is going to lose 3 games in a row. And the 49ers did do that last year, lost 3 in a row, and then he came out of it and, put together a great streak, kind of figured some things out. It doesn't look like McCaffrey's coming back anytime soon. So you can't really count on that right now. But they're not – they look like – when I watch them, outside of Ayuk on a couple of plays last week, they don't look like anybody could uncover and beat any coverage that the Cardinals threw at them.
Yeah, this also poses the question, guys, as we move forward about Purdy, whether or not he's a guy that can take you over the top, right? When you got all your stars on the field, he looked different. Is he a guy that can carry a team? He's not Burrow, in my opinion, where you just say, hey, I'm going to make plays and do things. And that's the question, whether or not how much they're going to pay him next year. We'll worry about that later. But here's the thing. Geno Smith has thrown in for an NFL best. Ready for it? 1,466 yards. He leads the league through 5 games. So if you're telling me, hey, who's playing better right now? Is it Purdy or is it Geno? I know he still made some mistakes. The problem is they are only running the football 21 times per game, and that is the fewest rushing attempts in the NFL. That gets back to, and we're talking about Seattle, that gets back to that success model. For Geno to be great, not having to lead the league in passing yards, they need to run the ball more, and I think that's
period. I mean, you look at the new offense coordinator, where he came from, University of Washington, what they did in order to win games at Washington, with Michael Penix Jr. in Rome and all the guys, Jalen Polk, all those guys, they threw the ball, and they threw the ball deep. And they tried to do that last week against the Giants, and Geno got crushed. So, if I was Mike McDonald, I'd take a little page out of my old head coach's book and maybe what Pete Carroll always wanted to do and maybe get back to establishing that. Because I think they got 2 good backs in Walker and Charbonnet, and I'd figure that out right now.
He's thrown it at least 34 times in every game.
I know.
That's what Ryan Grubb does. Like, that's his offense. He feels like, I'm going to spread you out, and I'm going to find DK or Jackson Smith and Jigba or Tyler Lockett, and I'm going to find my matchups. and that's where I'm going to go. And it's been backfiring right now the last couple of weeks.
It's in the huddle. Carl Dukes, Brian Baldinger, Jason La Canfora. We're talking ball. It's what we do. We get another early game, fellas. Jacksonville, Chicago, Sunday morning, 9:30. Okay, Jacksonville wins last week. Had a big lead, blew it. They found a way to get it done. But I felt like, Baldy, Caleb Williams looked his best since this started. And maybe now this Chicago team takes the next step, right? Maybe Caleb gets into a little groove. They are a 2-point favorite, by the way, overseas.
Okay, well, I mean, Caleb played well 2 weeks in a row, but they've also – DeAndre Swift has been unleashed. Yeah. And so he's had 2 real good games in a row. They're running the ball because they couldn't run it the first couple of weeks. He's running it better. Caleb is winning from the pocket.
Yep.
He's making excellent throws and good decisions. And he looks talented. But he also looks like he's playing within a real system. He's not trying to make these heroic type plays. Like he's literally staying in the pocket and making good throws. And they're running the ball. So that's good. On the other side, everybody talked about 3 receivers coming out of this draft. Okay. And they, whether it was Marvin Harrison or Malik Neighbors or Rome Odunze, they just did not talk a lot about it. Bless you, Jason. They did not talk about Brian Thomas Jr.
I don't. Yeah.
Like he is
You're
something to watch. That 85-yard touchdown last week. I mean, that guy is so smooth. He looks like he's on a track, at the Olympics running. But then getting out of breaks, separating the top of his route, like all of a sudden, very quickly here, the timing between Trevor and him is getting better. And now Christian Kirk, if they get Ingram back, like they might. It's a big crypt, but the offense looked awake last week. I think this game has a chance to be pretty exciting and pretty high scoring right now.
Yeah, over under, Jason, 44.5. I do like the over. I'm with Baldy. I think there'll be points scored. Tell me what you think about this game, man.
I'm on the under. Jacksonville's last 6 games in London have gone under. Those games have closed on average at 44.8 points. And they've featured 37.9. So they've come in on average 7 points the total under what the Vegas number was. So that's a pretty strong trend. London games in general since 2019, 20-8 to the under. Those games have closed at 45 and averaged 40 points. So I'm following those trends. I mean, this Chicago defense is allowing 16.2 per game over their last 11 games. Like if you take it back to the trade for Sweat, like they're a top 5 defense in EPA. They're top 8 in yards allowed per play. I don't think Jacksonville is going to fare very well on offense. I know they put up a bunch of yards and points on the Colts. They own the Colts. Whenever the Colts go to Jacksonville, you can put the Jacksonville Jaguars down for 35 points. Now, can Jacksonville stop anybody and can they contain the Chicago offense that looks like it's, to Baldy's point, starting to find its footing and the quarterback's getting better each week? I think they figured out what they can and can't do with that offensive line. And they're finally figuring out the division of labor in the backfield and activating Swift. And look, maybe Chicago rolls to 30-some points here and they push this thing over. But I think in a weird situation going abroad, a lot of times people are just a little more conservative. Those fields don't always play the way that they'd like. So I'm going under here.
One little nugget about Caleb, I have a pretty decent relationship with him over the years, going back to Gonzaga High School. But he has his best game last week, right? Mm-hmm. And he throws for 300 yards, and they win, and a couple touchdowns. And it looks like he's not Jayden Daniels, but he's getting better. So he gets home. First thing he does is he texts his quarterback coach, like, I didn't like my footing on this. Like he's hard on himself. And think, okay, young kid, go out, have a good time, celebrate, the win, the yardage, everything. Like he wants to like figure out how to get better next week. And so you hear those kind of things, you're like, I think he gets some of this stuff.
Yeah, I do too. I do think he has a lot of potential and upside still. It's just amazing what we're seeing with Jayden Daniels. And let's talk about that game, guys, because I think this has the potential to be a really fun and interesting game.
Yes.
Washington at Baltimore. Lamar's coming off a 348 and 4 touchdowns. He hit 9 different receivers. He was incredible last week to beat Joe Burrow. And we're going to talk about Burrow and company here and whether they're dead or not just a little bit. But Jayden Daniels goes into Baltimore. And Jason, look, if anybody can devise a plan maybe to slow a guy like this down, right, you would think it'd be the Ravens. But do you feel that way going into this one?
I am definitely on the over here, and I know that's public and chalky, but I don't buy either defense, and I love the multiplicity of both offense. I mean, these teams to me are very similar. They both can get, I mean, with Washington, it's really 4 guys now. It's really 4 guys heavily involved in the run game as ball carriers. With Baltimore, it's more like 3, but, 2 of them are going to the Hall of Fame. And one of them is one of the more underrated third down backs in the league for me, and Justice Hill. So they've got that going for them. And both of them are picking up explosive plays and really shocking people in the pass game as well. Baldy, I'm looking at what the Ravens are doing right now at 21 and 22 personnel, and it's otherworldly. Like, during this 3-game winning streak, they've run 80 plays out of 21 or 22. They're averaging 8.3 yards per play. They've got 6 touchdowns the last 3 weeks just out of that personnel grouping. They're averaging 7.5 yards per carry when they do that. And the passing game, you'd think with all those heavy guys, it's dink and dunk. They're averaging 11.3 yards per attempt out of those groupings. The league average is like 5.5. Yeah. Like, I don't know how you defend that right now. Like, now you got to worry about Charlie Kohler catching touchdown passes or a 15-yard pass down the sideline where he yaks it up for another 10 or 15.
And Mark Andrews woke up last week.
He's get on the Andrews over props. The numbers are still way too low. 23.5 you can find receiving yards. Like, Andrews hasn't had a touchdown in 8 games with Lamar Jackson, the longest streak of his career going back to last year. I got news for you. If the Ravens score 40 in this game, like I think they might, Mark Andrews is probably catching one of those. Like, if I know it and Lamar knows it, Andrews knows it, it's time for Mark Andrews to score again. You can get that plus 310. Like, all the other tight ends have 4 touchdowns combined, and Andrews doesn't have one since last October.
Well, it's interesting in that game, though, last week, because you could just look at the final stats and go, oh, they played the same. Well, they played from behind most of the game. They were down 10. I mean, because Burrow just kept throwing touchdowns. Yes. Mm-hmm. And Baltimore has no idea what to do. I mean, the guys are Jamar's crossing Eddie Jackson's face, and nobody's picking him up. I mean, they're just waving at these guys. Jamar catches a hitch screen on the outside and goes 70. But, because they were down, they really went away from Derrick Henry for a big chunk of that game last week. And people kind of forget about it because he had a 50-yard run in the fourth quarter, and he looked like he got his numbers. But Cincinnati did a good job at defending him. And then they went to Justice Hill, to your point, Jason, and they went to, their third down offense, and Lamar answered the bell. So I thought Baltimore, because they had to, found a different way to do it last week. Lamar was still fantastic. And I don't believe Washington secondary at all, but I don't trust Baltimore secondary either.
No.
And really, when you talk about Jayden Daniels right now, like, you can't just count him as the rookie of the year. Like, he's a candidate to be the player of the year. And maybe on this showcase against Lamar in Baltimore, if he continues to play like we've seen, like, he might, if he upstages Lamar in this game, which is impossible because everything's working offensively right now, you're going to start looking at him as the player of the year, not just the rookie of the year. He's just been that good.
First game of the season, they played the Bucs. It's Todd Bowles, his defense. First game, they lose. But they run off 4 straight. And, you look at, he beat Joe Burrow, he beat Kyler Murray, he beat Deshaun Watson, who's been completely terrible. Say what you want. This is legit. I feel like we're watching, it's legit as far as what this young man is accomplishing. And, Jason, I want to address real quick what you were saying about the Ravens, because this pisses me off. This is what Todd Monken should have been doing in the playoffs last year when they had home field advantage. This is their identity. Like, what you talked about with 21 and 22 personnel, this is what the Ravens do, and they go, stop us. And he went away from that, right? And we know what happened. If they stay the course and do this, Jason, they're going to be in great shape and be in position to get back to another AFC championship game. I truly believe that because this is so hard to maneuver. But Monken outthought himself last year. Now, to just see what they're doing now and to the numbers to back it up what you're saying, it's incredible. It's going to be a fun game, guys. Again, Ravens at home. You said you like the over 51 and a half? 51 and a half? Okay.
Yeah.
And Ravens.
A couple of things. If you want to bet this from either side, I think it's pretty well known now that Lamar Jackson for his career as a starting quarterback is 21-1 against the spread versus the NFC. However, you're looking at that 6.5 there. Underdogs of 6 points or more this year are 11-8 straight up and 16-2-1 against the spread. Like, that's a historically significant 5-game stretch. And that, like, you can't find many 5-game stretches like this in NFL history where underdogs of that length, 6 or more, are winning outright more than 50% of the time. And they're 16-2-1 against the spread this year. They're covering on average by almost 8 points.
Well,
like, that's hard to ignore.
What it says, Jason, is it's a week-to-week league, and nobody knows what, and everybody is changing week to week. So, you can't look at Arizona last week and their record going up to San Francisco and think like that's what happened. But it can happen now, like every week.
A couple more games, guys, to get to as we move into week 6. Believe it or not, it's week 6.
I know.
This damn thing is flying by. Let's talk about the Lions at Cowboys. I told Jason this, Baldy. I was at the Steeler game last week. Steelers forced 3 turnovers. They block a field goal, and they still lose. Right? They didn't have, they lost.
They believe in the forward pass, Carl.
Well, hey, if you talk to Steeler fans, no. I mean,
honestly, Kyle Allen comes in for one play, and he completes a 19-yard pass to Paul Freiermuth.
I know.
And he made it look easy. Anything else Justin Fields did last week looked like it was a struggle in every phase. All
right, so here's the question going into this game, Lions, Cowboys. And by the way, the number is 3. Cowboys are an underdog at home, 425 window on Sunday. All right, Jason, I know you fade the Cowboys. You don't believe in them. Yep. They did not have Micah, and they didn't have DeMarcus Lawrence in this game. I don't know if they're back or what the circumstances are. I haven't looked at the injury report for this week. But what I saw Dak do at the end of the game, if you're a Cowboy fan, it does give you a little hope because he was terrible. And then you go, all right, when he needed to make the plays, he made them, and they win with 20 seconds left on the clock. But this is a different animal, right? And the Lions that they're going up against offensively.
No, I think catching this motivated Lions team off a bye right now, and Dallas playing a game against a physical AFC North team, I like the Lions in this spot quite a bit. It's the kind of track that Jared Goff likes. Jared Goff's been a machine covering. Jared Goff as a road favorite is 20-12 against the spread in his career. He's 7-2 in his last 9. He's covered those games on average by a field goal more than he has to. Baldy, the Lions defense all of a sudden is number 4 in the NFL against the pass. I mean, and we know it's really hard to run on them.
Watch Carlton Davis play. I mean, that's been a huge upgrade, and then Terry and Arnold on the other side. Like, their cornerback play is much, much better. And they're playing a lot of man coverage, Jason, doing it.
So, last year, you couldn't run on them, but you could throw on them, and you could beat them on 3rd and long. They're now 6th in the league on 3rd down. I think Dallas is Dallas ran the ball in Pittsburgh last week. This is a totally different animal. I don't think Rico Dowdle's going off in this game. I think Dak's going to have to throw the ball 50, 55 times, keep playing his passing attempts over. I think that the Lions are going to out-physical them. I think that the fact that Dallas D-line is as beat up as it is going to be a real factor in this game. I like Montgomery and Gibbs. I like Montgomery over his yard total. I like Gibbs over longest rush of 14.5 yards or more. I think the Lions offensive line is going to have Jared Goff able to survey that field and pick his poison. And the Lions are a covering machine. I mean, the Lions are 13-5 against the spread on the road since the start of the 22 season. They're 10-2 against the spread the last 12 times they come off a bye. Dan Campbell has been a covering machine. Jared Goff's 38-18 against the spread indoors his last 56 games. I'm on the line.
I think, look, Dak took you on a roller coaster ride last week. I mean, the turnovers, but then the good plays. I mean, it was just one big roller coaster, which has kind of been his career for the most part against big teams or big games. This is a game where I just think Dan Campbell knows, like, the Cowboys' run defense needs to be tested. And when you run a healthy Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs at them, like, I don't know. I haven't seen their ability to stop a good running football team in a while. I don't know that they're built to do it right now. And I'm sure Dan Campbell feels like this is a good game to go see if they can do that right now.
Baldy, real quick, I just want you to discuss this offensive line. I think it's the best in the NFL. We're talking about Taylor Decker and Glasgow and Ragnow and all these guys. Sewell. Is this the hands down best offensive line in the league?
Yes. But even last week, though, Frank Ragnow didn't play in their last game. They had a bye, but the week before. And, Glasgow went to center. They filled in. Like, they didn't skip a beat. And that's a Pro Bowl center. And usually you lose a Pro Bowl center, things begin to collapse. But Glasgow can play center. He played at Michigan like that. Like, he's a good player there. They didn't skip a beat. And so, yes, they're just that good. And the tight ends, whether it's Brock Wright or, pick a guy, like they handle things very well on the edge.
Two things before we get out of here. One, New England names a new quarterback starter. They're at home against Houston this week. Will we see improvement with the offense? Look, we all think I'm speaking for both of you. I think it's a bad team. Baldy, we said it last year. They don't scare anybody as far as their skill position guys. But here comes Drake Maye. An improvement, or is it going to be much of the same?
Well, I mean, I think that if the quarterback attacks the way Drake Maye has shown at times in college, maybe Jalen Polk and Demario Douglas and Hunter Henry, maybe some of these guys come alive and they start adding some explosive plays to their offense right now. We'll see how long they can protect him. He's got escapability. Look, they're not going anywhere with Jacoby Brissett. We've seen all these young quarterbacks from Bo Nix to Caleb to Jayden do nothing but grow.
Yeah.
And so you might as well start that process right now. Like, he sat long enough. They scored 10 points against a kind of broken Miami defense last week. Like, they're not scoring. So you might as well put them out there and start figuring out the development process.
I'm with you on all that. But, Baldy, I'm going to ask the inverse question of Carl's. Is the New England Patriots offensive line the worst in the NFL? Because that's my concern.
Well, you've got a backup center. You've got a backup left tackle. Like, they had a couple games this season when they wanted to play their guys, and Layden Robinson and Caden Wallace. So, like, some of these guys look pretty good for rookies, but you got a backup center and left tackle. Like, they're not very good right now. It might be, Jason, to your point.
All right. Last game, fellas. Again, follow us, like us, subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Brian Baldinger, Jason La Canfora, I'm Carl Dukes. Arizona at Green Bay. I just want to hit on this game because we saw Jordan Love come back. 47.5, Jason, over under. Green Bay's favored by 5. I watched Kyler Murray. What's your take on Kyler Murray, Baldy? I mean, he can be so damn good, and then it can be bad. I mean, like that. To me, there's no in between with him sometimes.
Well, I mean, the guy is what he is. He's a phenomenal athlete. Yeah. You can't, like, if you're Marvin Harrison, you don't see the flight of the ball until it's past. Like, you can't see the release. It's just a fact. He's vertically challenged in the pocket. He needs to get out of the pocket to have better vision. Some of those things aren't going to change, and that's why we've seen some of this up and down with him. But look, last week San Francisco couldn't tackle him; they couldn't catch him. Like, he's still extremely mobile. He breaks defenses down. They found Trey McBride last week. They found Michael Wilson, which is good because it can't just go to Marvin Harrison like they did the week before. But this is a gritty team. That's a big win in San Francisco. They ran the ball very well. And so look, that's Green Bay's challenge because outside of Xavier McKinney in the middle of the field, I don't think this Green Bay defense scares anybody right now.
Jason, the Cards created 3 turnovers in that game against the 49ers. I think they're going to have to do a similar thing if they want to win against Green Bay.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, right, we can talk about whoever wins we know historically you win the turnover battle, you're going to win a lot of football games. The one thing Green Bay is doing defensively is they're turning people over. Now, is that replicable? Will there be regression? I don't know. They got 14 takeaways already, and Kyler Murray's a guy who throws a lot of picks on the road. Like, you get him out of that, the perfect confines of where they play. And you put him somewhere like Lambeau on grass and timing's a little off. So I am playing Kyler Murray to throw a pick in this game. Neither defense is doing much for me right now. Like 50 is a big number nowadays, but I mean, this thing was at 49.5. It's now down under 48. Like if it drops a little more, I may go over. I haven't played anything on this game yet. Baldy, the thing that I'm waiting for is, like, we've seen now Jordan Love connecting on deep shots, but the rhythm, timing, tempo, ball placement, accuracy on intermediate stuff, right? Things 5 to 25 yards downfield. That part of their offense just don't look right to me.
I agree. It didn't look like it did the second half of the season last year and in the postseason. And, some of it is, you're out for a couple of weeks, you're rehabbing. How good does the knee feel? How much confidence does he have in those kind of short to intermediate throws? It's an issue right now. It has been. Actually, the offense looked a lot better with Malik Willis for 2 weeks. Just back. So I don't think they're going to make that kind of a change.
No.
I think the whole Romeo Dobbs thing disturbs me. Like, something doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
Like, these are LaFleur came out and basically chastised America for saying things about their number one wide receiver. Well, look, if Jayden Reed's your best player and he's their best player, then feed him.
Yeah.
Like, who cares if they call it number one or not? Get the ball to your playmakers. Tucker Kraft did it last week, but Jayden Reed looks like he's their best player on offense right now. So figure out ways to get him the ball. If that's a number one receiver, it is. That's usually what we think, what we call it. Seems like there's a little bit of an issue right there with that team.
I got to say this before we go, guys. If Cleveland loses to Philly, they got to bench Deshaun Watson.
I agree.
They've got to.
They should have already done it. I mean,
they'll be 1-5, Jason. They got to do it.
They don't have billionaires don't have to do anything. Jimmy Haslam doesn't have to listen to anybody, and this is an ownership decision. Like,
the worst decision they made, Jason, was not keeping Joe Flacco, because Joe Flacco could lead that team to wins right now.
Yeah, but that would have upset the quarterback, right?
Well, I know what that's.
Not only did they get rid of Flacco, they got rid of the offense. They ran the offensive play caller out of the building, who helped unlock the downfield passing game with Flacco. Yep. He all of a sudden wasn't required anymore, after he just did a great job helping them salvage their season and get to the playoffs by reinventing himself on quarterback number 3. Because remember, they played the kid for a minute there too. Like,
that's a mess. I'm just saying. Hey. Cleveland, to me, I think they're going to be 1-5 after this.
I mean, Philadelphia's defense, they're coming off a bye. They have not played well outside of one game. They have not been good. They haven't been good up front. I mean, if there's a week to get healthy, I mean, I don't believe in this Philadelphia defense. The pass rush isn't there. The corners got just crushed by Baker Mayfield the week before. So, I mean, if there's a week to get it right, and then you got Jim Schwartz coming back to Philly, won a Super Bowl here. I'm sure, we all know Jim to some degree. How Jim Schwartz thinks. Like, I just want to show that Mr. Lurie and that Howie Roseman just what I can do.
But the guys who play for him, Baldy, you talked about at the onset of the show. At a certain point, when a defense, bro, they're averaging 3.8 yards per play on offense. They're 18% on third down. The league average is 38. They're 18% on third down. This cat has started 17 football games for them at quarterback. They have 27 offensive touchdowns in those 17 games.
Yep.
Like, getting the buy-in from the defense. I think the levee started to break a couple weeks ago, and I'm just waiting for Myles Garrett to come out and say, you know what, these 2 feet that have been jacked up since I was 8 years old or whatever, like, I'm going to go get them worked on now. Like, I'm going to go nip that in the bud so we can be ready for next year.
All right, fellas. Great
Yeah.
job. Hey,
Yeah.
we will talk to you guys next week. It's in the huddle. Subscribe, like us, and follow us. We will talk to you next week. Enjoy the games, everybody.